A mysterious man is seen dragging bodies and setting a forest on fire. At first, it looks like he is burning a single corpse, but it soon becomes clear that there are several bodies arranged to form the letter A. 6 years later, the story shifts to the first day at a prestigious television station called Big Vision. A talk show host named Nayana is preparing to go live. Just before the broadcast, the show's manager, Harris, informs her that the guest has been changed. The original guest was a minister named Ashok, but he suddenly backed out. It is likely he feared facing Nayana's sharp questions about his recent scandal. Nayana is clearly irritated, having spent days researching and preparing tough questions. The replacement guest is a famous actor named Kailash, a well-known star with a reputation for constantly changing partners. He has also recently been involved in a fraud case, a topic Nayana is more than ready to dig into. Elsewhere, a man named Aligar goes about his routine at home. After getting ready, he heads out to attend the talk show live at the TV station, carrying a bundle of umbrellas. Strangely, before leaving, he casually throws away his house keys.
Going live in 3, 2, 1.
That night, Nayana's talk show begins and quickly captures the attention of viewers across India. Nayana opens by confronting Kailash about the fraud allegations. Calm and confident, Kailash dismisses them as a setup by people trying to destroy his reputation. He claims the public can judge for themselves and expresses deep respect for his millions of fans. Suddenly, a voice from the audience breaks the flow. Aligar loudly insults Kailash, calling him foolish and mocking his fans as well. To ease the tension, Nayana allows the audience to participate and invites Kailash to respond. Instead, Aligar walks down to the stage and refuses to return to his seat. He continues provoking Kailash relentlessly, pushing him to the point where Kailash loses his temper and attempts to leave the studio. That is when everything spirals out of control. Aligar shoots Kailash in the leg, shocking everyone inside the studio and watching at home.
Please, unga seatla pe ukarunga. Kailash?
He fires a warning shot and orders everyone to stay quiet and cooperate. He makes it clear he has no interest in shouting like a typical movie villain. All the studio doors have already been locked, leaving no way in or out. Aligar then demands that the live broadcast continue. If it stops, he threatens to kill Nayana. The atmosphere turns terrifyingly tense. He tosses a cloth to Kailash so he can wrap his wounded leg, then calmly announces that within the next hour, a man named Narayanan will die. Outside the station, the police arrive under the command of Inspector Kabir. They prepare to negotiate with Aligar. The head of security explains that the building follows extremely strict procedures. Everyone entering the studio is scanned and thoroughly searched. No dangerous items are allowed inside, not even mobile phones. Yet Aligar was only seen carrying umbrellas, and no one understands how he managed to smuggle a gun into the studio. Elsewhere, a college student named Akash watches the shooting unfold on television and panics. He hurriedly packs his belongings and leaves his campus dormitory. At the same time, a bearded man also reacts in fear, calling his brother Kanan to warn him that the man who previously bought something from him is now holding people hostage at a TV station. Back at the scene, Kabir requests the building's blueprints and orders his team to prepare for a forced entry, realizing negotiation may be impossible. He also calls Harris, urging him to stay calm and assuring him that the police will take control of the situation. Meanwhile, Nayana tries to buy time until the police arrive by asking Aligar what he truly wants. Aligar introduces himself and explains that he is a failed writer whose works were repeatedly rejected by publishers for being considered uncreative. His novels include Crimson Sky, Eye of Hunter, Bleeding Heart, and Araya. He spent 10 years writing these books, pouring his time into deep research and gathering information from many places. Yet each manuscript was dismissed in just 10 minutes. Outside the studio, Kabir briefs his team. He explains that the only way into the studio is through a door that cannot be blown open because it is too close to the audience. Kabir then calls Aligar using a phone provided by the TV crew, hoping to hear his demands. Aligar ends the call immediately without saying a word. Back inside, Aligar reveals to Nayana that all he wants is for people to read his books. To achieve that, he plans to create his ultimate masterpiece, a perfect serial murder story where everyone becomes part of the narrative. He explains that he will kill one person each day, starting that night and continuing for the next 5 days, making a total of 6 victims. He also states that he will announce each target 1 hour before the execution and allow the police or anyone else to try to save them. Still, he is convinced that every target will die no matter what. Hearing this, Nyana boldly dismisses his plan as predictable. As a fan of crime novels, she has read hundreds of stories with the same idea. She even agrees with the publishers who claimed Aligar lacked creativity and originality. Aligar responds only with laughter. At the same time, Kabir divides his team and prepares to storm the studio, arrest Aligar, and secure all the audience members. Elsewhere, the television network hands Haris a list of everyone inside the studio. He freezes when he sees the name Narayanan and immediately alerts the police, making sure the information reaches Kabir just before the breach. It is then revealed that Aligar is not his real name, but a pen name commonly used by writers. His true name is Narayanan. Haris passes this revelation to Nayana, leaving her completely confused. If Aligar plans to take his own life that night, how could he possibly carry out 5 more murders over the next 5 days? As the truth behind his name sinks in, the story of a carefully planned nightmare begins. This is Aryan. Aligar simply smiles, questioning whether the story still feels predictable. He then warns Nyana that from this moment on, she will become the main character in his story, one who will be endlessly questioned by the police. He casts himself as the villain and promises that a hero will soon emerge. Even after his death, that hero will attempt to stop the murders, but will always fail. Shortly after the police force their way into the studio, in front of the cameras and the stunned audience, Aligar declares that this is the beginning of his perfect crime story. He then reveals that the first victim of the series is Narayanan, which is his real name. The next morning, on the second day, Police Commissioner Rafi finds the situation deeply unsettling after Aligar does the unthinkable. Even so, the investigation continues to determine whether the remaining threats are real. Since Inspector Kabir is reassigned to oversee election security, Rafi's team recommends appointing a replacement inspector who is experienced, firm, intelligent, highly driven, and fearless in confronting criminals. That officer is Arivudai Nambi. At the time, Nambi is busy dismantling a criminal group with ease. From there, he heads straight to a religious court, where his wife Anita has filed for divorce. They have been married for 6 years, but have lived separately for the past 2. Anita can no longer endure Nambi's relentless ambition and his obsession with work, which keeps him away from home most of the time. Anita's lawyer explains that she wants a child, but Nambi has always refused, believing that having a family would interfere with his career. The divorce case has already been ongoing for 6 months. However, since Nambi still refuses to sign, the judge grants them 3 more days to reach a final decision. Outside the courtroom, Nambi and Anita speak privately. Anita admits that she is not seeking divorce because she has stopped loving him, but because she fears the danger that comes with his job. This moment brings back memories for Nambi. 6 years earlier, they first met while working on a serial murder case in a forest, similar to the one shown at the beginning of the film. At the time, Anita was a forensic officer assigned to the case. They continued working together on several investigations, and eventually grew closer after reconnecting at a party. As Nambi's career flourished, with numerous murder suspects arrested and cases successfully solved, their relationship quietly deteriorated. Nambi became too consumed by his work. Now, officially assigned as the replacement inspector, Nambi visits Aligar's house, which Aligar had lived in for over 20 years. Neighbors reveal that Aligar was married and had an 18-year-old son named Surya. His wife passed away years earlier, and Surya has long been living with his aunt after frequent conflicts with his father. In other words, Aligar had been living alone. After thoroughly searching the house, Nambi becomes convinced that Aligar was highly intelligent. There are no meaningful clues left behind. Aligar has burned all important documents and records, leaving only an old diary that appears completely empty. Nambi then meets with Nyana for questioning. Nyana is convinced that Nambi is the hero Aligar spoke about before his death, the one who would eventually emerge. Nambi understands that Nyana's talk show has massive ratings, airs during prime time, and that she herself is a public figure. Still, he believes Aligar chose that stage for a deeper reason. Through CCTV footage, Nambi also uncovers how Aligar smuggled the gun into the studio. The day before the broadcast, Aligar disguised himself as a food delivery worker and managed to hack the building's security system while the guards were distracted. Later, he paid a cleaning staff member to bring a box into the studio, claiming it contained a phone. He pretended it was meant for a selfie with Nyana, but inside the box was the gun that started everything. After a full day of investigation, Nambi reports back to Commissioner Rafi. He believes Aligar had a specific reason for doing the unthinkable on Nayana's talk show. Nambi is also troubled by two major questions: how Aligar plans to announce the next victims, and how he intends to kill them after his own death. Rafi advises him to stay alert and continue the investigation quietly, without media attention, since tensions are high and the election period is approaching. That same night, right at 7 o'clock, several billboards across the city suddenly switch to a video of Aligar. Drivers waiting at red lights immediately start recording. Just as promised, Aligar announces that the second victim is named Ashok, and that he will be killed within 1 hour in the city of Chennai. The threat sparks widespread panic, especially among people who share the same name. Even Minister Ashok panics at home and urgently requests police protection. Despite this, Nambi is convinced the intended target is not the minister. Aligar would know that a public figure like him would be heavily guarded, and it would be impossible for the police to track down every person named Ashok across the city. Elsewhere, a limping security guard named Ashok also fears that he might be the target. He enters a public phone booth to call his grandchild. The moment the call connects, a bomb detonates, killing him instantly.
Hello, Tata.
Daisy?
Nambi rushes to the crime scene, where a female officer named Shrestha is leading the operation. She explains that the bomb was made with low-intensity RDX and appears to have been designed specifically to kill Ashok alone. The trigger was planted inside the telephone, activating automatically when the receiver was lifted. Nambi immediately orders his team to dig deeper into the victim's background, identify who he called, and trace the explosive supplier, suspecting there may be a link between Aligar and Ashok. Media coverage explodes, with many believing Aligar has truly carried out his threat. The next morning, on the third day, Nambi visits Ashok's boarding house, a place that looks neglected and run down. Inside, he finds Ashok's suitcase filled with clothes, dolls, and family photos. It is then revealed that Ashok was a former Indian Army soldier. From there, Nambi visits the publishing house handling Aligar's books. He learns that the publisher has decided to release Aligar's works, and demand has skyrocketed, reaching thousands of orders in just one day. Two film directors have even expressed interest in adapting the books into movies. The head of the publishing house explains that before the TV station hostage incident, Aligar had visited their office to inform them that his book royalties would be handled by a lawyer he had personally chosen. However, Aligar never revealed the lawyer's identity, only saying that the lawyer would come forward when the time was right. Later, Nambi calls Nayana to discuss Aligar's 4 books. 3 of them are already available in stores. Only one cannot be found anywhere, a manuscript titled Arya, which was never published. Both Nambi and Nayana have read the 3 released books and find that none of their stories are connected to the serial killings. Meanwhile, 2 officers manage to track down a young man named Akash. They arrest him as he steps off a bus and take him away for questioning by Nambi. It is then revealed that Akash is actually Surya, the son of Aligar. He insists that he had no involvement in the murders. In fact, he has not seen his father for years. Surya had fled his dormitory out of fear that he would be dragged into his father's crimes after the shocking TV station incident. Surya then explains that Aligar was obsessed with achieving something extraordinary, especially after his wife passed away. Aligar often disappeared from home for long periods, claiming he was conducting research for his ultimate masterpiece. At night, Surya would sometimes wake up to strange noises and see his father pacing back and forth, his clothes covered in dirt. Even Surya never really knew what his father was doing. 2 years earlier, Aligar once asked Surya to read what he called his greatest work. Surya never did, and he did not even know the book's title. Around the same time, Nambi interrogates Ashok's son and daughter-in-law, both of whom claim they never knew Aligar. The irony is painful. Years ago, they had driven Ashok out of their home because they did not want the burden of taking care of him. Ashok ended up living alone in a small boarding house. They even ignored his phone calls, despite the fact that he called home regularly every 2 days at 8 in the evening. Hearing this, Nambi can only shake his head. As a small form of punishment for abandoning their own father, he deliberately leaves them sitting there without dismissing them. Nambi then reports to Rafi that Ashok was not just a former soldier, but also someone who had studied information technology and was highly skilled in hacking and cybersecurity. This discovery explains how Aligar was able to breach building security systems and hijack digital billboards at precise times to broadcast his recorded messages. Nambi orders all billboards across the city to be shut down to prevent further panic. From everything he has uncovered, Ashok appears to have had no direct connection to Aligar. It seems as though Aligar chose his victims at random. However, Nambi notices one important similarity. Both Aligar and Ashok were deeply lonely men who had lost their wives and had been abandoned by their children. Based on this pattern, Nambi begins to believe the next target will be an elderly man, isolated and forgotten by his family. Just as Nambi finishes his report at 7 in the evening, he is informed that another video from Aligarh has surfaced, this time on outdoor television screens. Aligarh announces that the third victim is named Razia. Nambi is immediately reprimanded by his superiors for misjudging the profile of the next victim. From the name alone, the police realize that Razia is a Muslim woman. Soon after, Razia is shown preparing to perform as a traditional dancer at a festival. Although Nambi orders his team to spread the victim's name across Muslim communities and track her down, they arrive too late. Razia is poisoned and dies while she is on stage. The next morning, on the fourth day, forensic investigators confirm that Razia was killed by cyanide mixed into her lipstick. She always brought her own makeup to performances and preferred to do her makeup herself. With no CCTV cameras inside the festival building, Nambi deploys his team to determine who could have tampered with her cosmetics and to gather detailed information about her life. Not long after, Nambi receives crucial new information about both Ashok and Razia. A close friend of Ashok, who is also a war veteran, reveals that Ashok was an incredibly brave man. During combat, he once saved 6 fellow soldiers, even though he himself was badly injured, an injury that eventually led to the amputation of his right leg. His friend feels deep sorrow knowing that Ashok was later cast out by his own child and forced to live in a poor boarding house. Despite everything, Ashok was a true fighter who always placed the lives of others above his own. In the past, Razia ran a traditional dance studio for underprivileged children and was widely known as a kind and dedicated teacher. However, she faced resistance from both sides. Some Hindu groups protested because she was a Muslim woman teaching Hindu traditional dances. At the same time, members of the Muslim community opposed her as well, arguing that the dances were not part of Islamic tradition. Despite her deep love for dance, the pressure became too great, and the studio was eventually forced to shut down to avoid further conflict. To speed up the hunt for the next victim, Nambi forms a cyber team with access to the National Population Database. This way, when Aligarh announces the next name, the police can locate the person much faster. Not long after that, Nayana asks Nambi to come to her house because she wants to talk more about the serial murder case. Nayana is still struggling to understand Aligarh's choices. Ashok was a respected military officer, and Razia was a devoted teacher. They were ordinary people with no criminal records and no public fame. This raises a troubling question. What exactly is Aligarh targeting? Soon after, Nambi's team identifies the supplier of the RDX explosives. The man turns out to be Kanan, who has an older brother named Balram, a well-known mafia figure operating at the harbor. Without wasting time, Nambi goes after Kanan before he can escape by sea. At the port, Kanan's men attempt to block Nambi using various weapons, but they are quickly taken down. Once arrested, Kanan admits that Aligarh approached him to buy RDX, which Kanan usually used for illegal fishing. Aligarh also ordered cyanide, and Kanan agreed because the payment was extremely high. Aligarh had even requested 2 additional chemicals, but Kanan did not have them and cannot remember their names. Kanan is then detained for further questioning, not only about the explosives, but also about the drug and illegal goods smuggling operations run by his brother Balram. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, a laptop belonging to Aligarh, its location still unknown, automatically sends replies to multiple phone numbers. The messages contain a recorded video. In it, Aligarh explains that at this point, the police will likely be confused and suspect that someone is helping him carry out the murders. He insists that he is working alone. The video even shows footage of a bomb being planted inside a telephone, followed by the announcement of the 4th victim, a man named Yuvaraj. Immediately, the police search the database for anyone named Yuvaraj. At the same time, social media erupts with speculation about who this person might be. Strangely, by 11 o'clock that night, no victim named Yuvaraj is found. For a moment, it seems possible that Aligarh has finally failed. Exhausted and running on little sleep, Nambi's team urges him to go home and rest. Meanwhile, Balram and his group grow increasingly angry with Nambi for beating his men and arresting Kanan. If Kanan continues to be pressured by the police, there is a real risk he could expose Balram's drug smuggling operations. Because of that, Balram orders his men to follow Nambi closely and kill him the moment an opportunity appears. After returning home, Nambi falls asleep in his chair and is haunted by a nightmare in which Aligarh reveals that the next target is Anita. The following morning, on the 5th day, Nambi receives confirmation that Yuvaraj's body has finally been found. Yuvaraj was an environmental activist who had planned to record a protest video the previous afternoon to protect marine ecosystems. Instead, he suddenly struggled to breathe and collapsed. Investigators later discovered that the tank he was carrying, which should have contained a normal mix of oxygen and nitrogen, had been altered to contain pure oxygen. That concentration proves fatal to the lungs. After analyzing all three victims so far, Nambi reports to senior officials that Aligar had clearly studied each target's daily routine. This allowed him to prepare every murder long before doing the unthinkable himself. Ashok regularly called his child every 2 days at night using the same public phone. Razia consistently performed at festivals and always brought her own makeup. Yuvraj carefully scheduled his protest content and always carried his own tank. Everything followed a predictable pattern. Including Aligar himself, all four victims share the same trait. They were ignored, overlooked, and considered unimportant by society. Nambi becomes convinced that Aligar spent years observing countless people until he found the right ones to fit his plan, making the murders appear impossible to execute by someone who was already dead. The level of planning is terrifying, yet undeniably brilliant. Nambi explains that a case like this is unprecedented. Just as Aligar claimed, the serial killings were meant to be his ultimate masterpiece as an artist. At the same time, Nambi realizes a crucial clue lies in the rejected book title, Area. Each letter represents the name of a victim: Aligar himself, Ashok, Razia, and Yuvraj. That leaves two remaining initials, A and N, for the final victims. Despite everything, Nambi believes there is no such thing as a perfect crime. He is confident that the police can still stop Aligar's plan. Nambi visits Anita, who is staying at a relative's house after missing the final court session, which legally finalizes their divorce. He apologizes for his selfishness, thanks her for the memories they shared, and hopes she will find someone who can give her a better life. Unbeknownst to him, two of Balram's men have been following Nambi closely, constantly updating their boss. Back at the office, the IT specialists explain that their cyber unit has developed an AI-based system connected to the National Citizen Database. The program can rapidly summarize personal profiles, allowing them to locate individuals much faster. Even so, the process can take time if the next victim's name is very common. The IT team also reveals that they can now trace Aligar's video messages shortly before they go public, giving the police a small window to act faster. Soon after, Nambi learns that a lawyer has received a package sent by Aligar. Inside is his last will, appointing that lawyer as the executor. Aligar states that all proceeds from his book royalties, his house, and the remainder of his assets are to be distributed evenly among 7 charitable organizations. These include a Writers' Welfare Association, a military welfare organization, a national teachers' welfare body, an environmental campaign group, the Nightingale Welfare Association, and Care India, which advocates for marginalized communities. The 7th organization is the Police Welfare Association. Nambi immediately realizes that 4 of these organizations represent the 4 victims so far. The Police Welfare Association, however, is nothing more than Aligar's mockery of the police for failing to save anyone. That leaves only 2 organizations unaccounted for: the Nightingale Welfare Association and Care India. Elsewhere, the TV station receives another package from Aligar. This time, the video recording is stored on a flash drive. It becomes clear that Aligar has anticipated the police's moves and knows they are relying on a cyber team. That afternoon, the station airs the new video, where Aligar announces that the 5th victim is named Asha. Within minutes, the cyber unit narrows the search down to 3 nurses named Asha. Among them, one woman stands out. She has suffered a deep personal loss, much like the previous victims. She has over 20 years of experience, served as a head nurse for 5 years, and stood on the front lines during the COVID outbreak alongside her husband, who was also a nurse. Tragically, Asha's husband died from COVID. After his death, neighbors even drove her away out of fear of infection. At 5:25 in the afternoon, Nambi rushes to Asha's house with his team. Along the way, they unknowingly pass Asha as she walks toward her husband's grave, without realizing who she is. When Nambi arrives at her home, neighbors inform him that Asha has likely gone to the cemetery near the church, since it is the anniversary of her husband's death. Nambi manages to reach the cemetery just in time and secures Asha while she is praying. However, as she is placed into the car, Nambi notices blood on her hand. It is already too late. Asha has died after inhaling smoke from a candle she always carries during her visits to the grave. The candle had been mixed with a deadly chemical. News of Asha's death quickly spreads, and once again, the police are blamed for failing to save the victim. Nambi is overwhelmed with anger. Aligar is always one step ahead, and every person he kills is someone who devoted their life to others. The following morning on the final day, a park cleaning worker discovers a mobile phone taped under a bench and immediately turns it over to the police. Inside the phone is another video from Aligar. He had installed an app that would automatically send the message at 7 that evening. This means the police still have time to protect the final victim, identified only by the initial N. When the video is reviewed, Aligar explains that the climax of his story will be even more intense. He refuses to reveal the victim's name. He only says that the person with the initial N could be anyone, including Nambi himself, whose name also begins with that letter. This leads the police to suspect that Nambi is the final target. The seventh organization named in Aligar's will is the Police Welfare Association, which strengthens their concern. Nambi's profile also fits the pattern. He lives alone and has been abandoned by his wife, Anita. Although Nambi believes he will not be the victim, the police insist that he remain at headquarters under protection. In the end, he agrees. Even so, his team continues searching for anyone with the initial N. The most likely target is believed to be an activist who lives alone and has been ignored by society. At 7:30 in the evening, just 30 minutes before the final execution, Bahram orders his men to prepare to kill Nambi, who is still monitoring the situation from the police office. Suddenly, Nambi thinks of Nayana. Given her outspoken nature and strong opinions, she could also fit the profile of the next target. When her phone goes unanswered, Nambi immediately orders Shrestha to go to Nayana's studio and check on her. Meanwhile, the IT specialist notices something unusual about Aligar's final video. When Nambi takes a closer look, he spots a stack of books beside Aligar. It is the same old diary that Aligar had burned in his house. Nambi immediately checks the book in the evidence room and senses something strange when touching the pages. As he suspected, once the paper is gently heated, hidden writing begins to appear. The pages reveal all of Aligar's murder plans, along with a detailed layout of a secret basement beneath his house. This discovery explains why Surya used to hear strange noises at night and saw Aligar pacing around with dirt covering his clothes. His father had been digging and building the basement all along. With no time to waste, Nambi rushes to Aligar's house, believing the basement may hold crucial clues or even the final victim. As he approaches the area, he is forced to continue on foot due to a large religious gathering nearby. At the same time, Aligar's automated messages are sent to several people in the crowd, falsely telling them that they are the next victims. Panic immediately erupts. While Nambi tries to avoid the chaos, Bahram orders his men to kill Nambi on the spot. They attack, but are quickly defeated. With only 5 minutes left, Nambi sprints toward Aligar's house. Elsewhere, Shrestha successfully reaches Nayana and confirms that she is safe at the studio. Meanwhile, another team informs Nambi that the likely final victim is an activist named Nalini, a transgender woman who has not returned home for over a week, according to her neighbors. When Nambi arrives at Aligar's house, he follows the hidden blueprint and lifts the mattress, revealing the entrance to the basement. Without realizing it, he walks straight into Aligar's trap and becomes locked inside a glass chamber. Moments later, Aligar's video plays, welcoming Nambi as the hero of the story. Aligar had always known that someone as sharp as Nambi would eventually find the basement. This underground space had been his true workspace, filled with laptops and equipment. Aligar had even been monitoring a park cleaning worker for months, knowing that after returning from a 2-week trip, she would be especially diligent and eventually find the phone he planted before doing the unthinkable. Suddenly, water begins to flood the glass chamber. Aligar's recording explains that he spent 10 years perfecting this plan, ensuring there would be no mistakes. Nambi desperately tries to block the water and smash the glass, but nothing works.
Come on.
Just as the chamber fills completely, he remembers the lighter in his pocket and uses it to shatter the glass. Against all odds, Nambi escapes. At the same time, Shrestha and her team arrive and confirm that Nalini is likely the final target. Nambi realizes Nalini must be somewhere inside the basement. He notices that the water level is dropping quickly, draining through gaps in the floor. The truth becomes clear. Nalini has been hidden there for a week, kept alive with oxygen. Aligar had calculated every outcome. If Nambi escaped the glass chamber, the water would be redirected to flood Nalini's holding area and kill her. It is a horrifying yet brilliant design. Fortunately, Nambi pieces everything together in time and manages to rescue Nalini. The next day, the police hold a press conference to officially close the serial murder case linked to Aligar. They also publicly commend Nambi and his team for bringing the nightmare to an end. During the conference, the question arises about Aligar's true motive behind the killings. Nambi explains that Aligar's goal was to force society to reflect and to value one another more deeply. As the first victim, Aligar himself was a gifted writer whose manuscript titled Arya was rejected and barely read by publishers, despite years of dedication. His fate reflects how many talented people are ignored and dismissed without real consideration. The second victim, Ashok, was once a national hero and a brave soldier. Yet after becoming a security guard, he was no longer respected or noticed. His death represents elderly workers who are paid minimal wages and forgotten by the system. The third victim, Razia, deeply loved traditional dance but faced discrimination because of her religion. Her art was dismissed as outdated and irrelevant. Her death serves as a reminder of traditional artists who have slowly faded from public memory. The fourth victim, Yuvaraj, was an environmental activist, a rare and often mistreated figure in a world driven by profit. He was opposed by polluters and even lacked support from his own family, who believed his cause was pointless. His death was meant to warn that the planet is no longer healthy and that those who care are often silenced. The fifth victim, Asha, was a frontline nurse who risked her life daily to save others during the COVID pandemic. Yet once the crisis passed, she was cast aside, her sacrifices forgotten. The final intended victim, Nalini, represents one of the most marginalized groups in society. As a transgender woman, she faced rejection, isolation, and abandonment by both family and community. Nalini symbolizes the ongoing struggle of minorities who are rarely seen or heard. Nambi explains that Aligar approached each victim using false identities. Through this, he learned their life stories and daily routines, allowing him to prepare each murder in advance. Every victim was killed while doing something they truly loved. According to Nambi, all of them were true heroes who were never honored or acknowledged. Through this brutal series of crimes, Aligar wanted society to recognize that every person has a role worth respecting and remembering. Even so, Nambi emphasizes that Aligar's actions were unforgivable, as murder remains a grave crime. Several days later, Nambi shares a quiet moment over ginger coffee with Nayana and fellow officers. Nayana still wonders whether Aligar had planned from the beginning for Nambi to become the hero who would lead and solve the case. Nambi believes that could not have been guaranteed, since any capable officer might have been assigned. That belief is shaken when Nambi finally receives the manuscript of Arya. He is stunned to discover that for the past 6 years, Aligar had been secretly observing him. After seeing Nambi's commitment and integrity, Aligar became convinced that Nambi was the perfect hero for his story. The book's ending reveals that even Aligar himself was unsure who the final victim should be, Nambi or Nalini. That is why the 6th day was designed as a cruel test. If Nambi failed to escape, he would die. If he succeeded, Nalini would be drowned. In the end, it becomes clear that the man who killed so many people and burned the forest at the beginning was Aligar himself. From the very start, everything had been carefully planned by Aligar, the brilliant and disturbed mind behind it all, including the creation of Nambi as the hero of his twisted masterpiece. So the moral of the story is, if you want people to read your book, maybe try a better cover and a decent marketing plan, not umbrellas, billboards, and a whole murder schedule.